It's even windier than usual out here today, so I'm hoping that won't be too disruptive. We're moving on to Joshua chapter 6, verses 17 through 19 to start with. This is Joshua and the Hebrews have been marching around the city of Jericho, and this is the seventh day, the seventh time they've marched around the city on the seventh day. And Joshua says, "Now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction, it and all who are in it. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all who are with her in the house, because she had the messengers that we sent. And you by all means abstain from the accursed things, lest you become accursed when you take of the accursed things, and make the camp of Israel a curse, and trouble it. But all the silver and gold, and vessels of bronze and iron, are consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord." And then, but after the battle of Jericho, we read that Achan saw some of these, the gold and some of the other loot in the city, and he's thinking that the former owners are dead; they don't need it now. So it's kind of a victimless crime, right? I mean, everything belongs to God anyway. So what difference does it make whether it's in Achan's tent or at the tabernacle? So move on towards the end of the chapter, or the beginning of the next chapter, chapter 7, verses 1, and then I'm going to skip down to verse 6. "But the children of Israel committed a trespass regarding the accursed things, for Achan the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah of the tribe of Judah, took of the accursed things, so the anger of the Lord burned against the children of Israel." And down to verse 6. Nope, not verse 6. Well, I'm not sure what verse I meant to read there. But the people of Israel then attacked the small city of Ai. Oh, it was verse 5 that I meant to read. "And the men of Ai struck down about 36 men, and they chased them from before the gate as far as Shevarim, and struck them down on the descent. Therefore the hearts of the people melted and became like water." So Achan's sin brought this curse against Israel, and 36 men died as a result. That's not exactly a victimless crime. Now there are 36 families without fathers. If Achan thought that taking, some inanimate objects that belonged to nobody wasn't going to hurt anybody, he was dead wrong, literally dead wrong. And when they finally figured out that it was Achan, here's what Joshua did, going down to verses 24 through 26. "Then Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the garment, the wedge of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, and all that he had, and they brought him to the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, 'Why have you troubled us? The Lord will trouble you this day.' So Israel stoned him with stones, and they burned him with fire after they had stoned them with stones. Then they raised over him a great heap of stones, still there to this day. So the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger. Therefore the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day." So Joshua had Achan, his sons, his daughters, his livestock, his tent, and all of his belongings stoned and then burned. That seems pretty harsh. One thing to keep in mind is that Achan's family wasn't innocent in this. He hid all these belongings underneath his family's tent, and he couldn't have done that without everybody in his family knowing. And Joshua had already warned them that touching any of these sacred things, any of these things that were devoted to destruction for God, was going to result in a curse against the entire people. And Achan didn't believe him. And evidently Achan's family didn't believe him either. We are obligated to respect and obey the heads of our families, but not when it means disobeying God. There's a limit to all earthly authority. All earthly authority, just like all physical things, are delegated by God to man. And we don't get to do anything we want with them. They belong to God, and when he says, do this with that, or treat this person that way, then that's exactly what we need to do. God's law in general is pretty libertarian. if you don't hurt anyone, you'll be fine. If you don't take advantage of the innocent, the poor, you'll be fine. If you do damage something or hurt someone, repay what you've done. Make it right. God's law is pretty easy overall. But there are things that modern people don't seem to understand, things that we call victimless crimes, like laws against sexual immorality and against idolatry. Like, who really do those things hurt? And we think they don't hurt anybody. But crimes like idolatry and sexual immorality bring guilt on the whole people. They poison the land, and they bring God's curse on our communities. And so when we do these things that God said not to do, the same things that he said he destroyed the Canaanites for doing, they weren't given the law at Sinai, but God still held them responsible for their idolatry and sexual immorality, and he destroyed them for it. Those things are not victimless crimes. And abortion, who in the world thinks that's a victimless crime? That's crazy. So Achen's supposedly victimless crime brought guilt on all the people and cost 36 men their lives. They brought God's judgment on Israel, and only destroying Achan and finally destroying those things that God had devoted to destruction removed God's wrath. God is tolerant, and he knows our hearts, and he still loves us. But he gives us rules for a reason. The things that we do, whether we know it or not, affect all of the people around us. The spiritual effects of our actions are real. This is Jake Harper from the American Torah. Be blessed.